What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of Make Every Second Count Live with me, your host, and international award-winning Make Every Second Count speaker. Now, on this show, we'd like to help you get through what you are dealing with in life by showing you that each and every person out there has had issues in their life, whether that is a severe car accident like myself, whether that is financial struggles, the loss of a partner, or extreme illness. Whatever it may be, people have issues, and our lives are not determined by anything in our past. And I wanted to make that the title of tonight's show because tonight's guest, Bryan, is really going to show you how that is true. So, guys, I ask you if you would please share this episode out. Invite as many people to watch it as you can, and don't forget to give us all kinds of thumbs up, hearts, frowny faces, cry faces. Heck, you can even get pissed off at us. That's fine. Just help us trick the algorithm on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. But I also would like to say that you guys should keep the comments coming. Tell us your biggest takeaway. Tell us if you have any questions because we're here to answer those questions. But with no further ado, I would like to bring to the stage Bryan. Hey Bryan, how are you doing this
Brother
evening?
Jeff, good man. How are you?
Oh, I am fantastic. It's great, and I thank you so much for coming on here this evening. I know you're a busy guy, and life gets in the way sometimes, and you took the time out of your schedule to be here with me, and I truly appreciate that.
Well, brother, I got to tell you, let me tell you how special you are, brother. Today was a day on the lake. As you can tell, I haven't been back at my computer for probably 5 minutes. I was out on the boat fishing today and called it a day short. So I'm living life, called it short to come spend and hang out with you. So,
Well, I appreciate that, and I'm sure everybody out there will also do the same. But if you would like to take a short minute here and introduce yourself, tell everybody your name, who you are, oh gosh, who you are, where you're from, what you do, and more importantly, why you do what you do, and then we will go ahead and hop into the show after that.
sure, love
All
to.
right, thanks.
Hey everyone, my name is Bryan Ashworth. I am the founder of Stairwell Resource Group. That's one of the things that I do, but that's the one that I lead with because that's where my passion is. Stairwell Resource Group was founded several years ago through a traumatic experience that I went through, which we could talk more about. But my passion, I am a visionary, I'm a leader, soon to be author, excited about that, coach and public speaker.
Woo!
And yeah, and I just love helping people. And when I say helping people specifically, it's a little bit of hope what we hopefully get to talk to tonight. It's really just kind of taking inventory of your life and looking at what is the story I'm telling myself about the events in my life, and then really identifying and coming to the realization of what is true and what's not, and empowering to rewrite that story so that you can live from the passions in which you were designed and created to live. And one of the ways that I do that is I have a passion assessment that I walk clients through, and we can do that individually. We can do that as a team and as a corporate setting. We can do that. We're rolling out a program for education in schools. And so we're going to be able to impact thousands and thousands of kids across the country to help them identify passions, that help them reshift or position their compass to make better career choices so they're not getting at the age of 30 and going, why am I doing what I'm doing? Right. So
Yeah, that's amazing.
yeah,
Sorry about that. I know I was looking at my phone there. I was trying to invite some people so they make sure they're on this show so they can also to learn about you and your life and the struggles that each of us have had. But I would like to say hello to Ben Bruce, who is watching us from Nigeria. He said that hey, Brian, welcome to the show. And
Thank
then
you.
we also have my dad who is watching from across the street. So, my background is, as I said earlier, I was in a traumatic car accident that nearly ended my life at the age of 17. I spent 3.5 months in the hospital, and 2.5 of those 3.5 months were in a coma. Now, when I finally did come to, they told me that I might never walk again. But through my perseverance and 21 plus years of recovery, I am now walking. And I like to show people that they can accomplish anything in their life. So, Brian, I have to ask, is there anything that you have had to grow through? Now, I say grow through because I don't believe we just go through things. I think we need to look for the lessons in those things that we go through and end up growing through those things. So, can you tell us about a time in your life where you've had to grow through something?
Oh my gosh. I mean, we could cherry pick here. Yeah. How deep do we want to go, Jeff? I mean, you know my story. Is there any particular part of my story that you would like me to dive into?
No, just touch on your story a little bit.
Well, at a very high level view, growing up, I think I had probably a common, general childhood. My biological father abandoned me and my mother when I was born, so I never met him until I was 15, and that's kind of where my story begins. And when I talk about rewriting your story, that's kind of where it began for me. And as I became an adult, children really don't have a good framework to shape perspective, and so my perspective growing up was just adopting my mother's perspective about that event. And her obviously perspective was obviously very resentful and angry. And I took that on and I personalized that. Why didn't my dad want me? And so the narrative that I kind of wrapped around that event was I'm not wanted, I'm not lovable. And that really shaped and colored everything moving forward in my life. And so whether I mean, I was not aware of this, and whether I was conscious of it or not, I began to look for evidence to affirm that story. And so I would get into school and I wasn't accepted, and it would reaffirm that narrative. And so I was always looking for somewhere to fit in. I finally found that in the Army, and I could yell and scream and get awarded for it. But
That's my kind of job.
what served me professionally in that broken state did not serve me personally. And so in my mid 20s, I'm going through my second divorce. It was a very nasty divorce, the worst of my life. And even after the divorce, my ego was so bruised, the mud kept flying, and my orders for Iraq got deterred to a county jail. And instead of serving my country overseas, I served 12 years in prison based on an accusation. And so that's probably really the biggest, most impactful, and really influential opportunity to grow through something, because
Wow.
it was a crisis of faith for me. How could a just God allow an innocent man to go to prison? And I could tell you story after story. And so it really put me in a position where I was isolated. There's nobody I could talk to. There's nobody I could really call. I mean, I was stuck in a cell with me, myself, and I, and my thoughts, and this God that I had accused of betraying me. And I had to grow and work through that. And it took me years to come to a place to just accept my circumstances and to take ownership. This is my life. And what am I going to do with that?
Yeah. Wow. I'm so sorry to hear about that. And I think a lot of people go to prison on just an accusation with very little to no proof. And that has to be hard. But I have to ask, Brian, if you don't mind, would you tell everybody the circumstances that landed you in jail?
Well, like I said, I mean, I had a huge anger issue, and and I think what's most important for the audience to really take away from our time together around that question is the circumstances are less relevant than the pathway that got me there, because I think when when we let life define our perspective, and that perspective is shaped whether that's through religion or through the narrative we adopt from our parents or whatever, it kind of shapes our world. And when events and circumstances don't play out according to that narrative, for me, I just grew up an angry kid, and so that anger was the fuel, and that was the vehicle and the fuel that I tried to get to serve me until it didn't. And so I think the biggest takeaway and the bigger question isn't so much the circumstances as it was what led me to those circumstances, because um, I would be willing to bet that there's probably people in your audience that are carrying anger and resentment in their life. And whether they are expressing it and taking it out on other people, or they're holding it up and it's eating them up like a cancer, which, by the way, I beat cancer a couple years ago. It manifested in my body. Um, whether, regardless of the destination of the pathway that those circumstances lead you and the details around those, we have to get to the place where we look inside ourselves and we define. Uh, Number one, I had to take responsibility for that anger.
Yeah.
Right? I pointed my finger for years at the person that made the accusation. My ex-wife retaliated and made the accusation against me. And I carried bitterness for years, Jeff, and I fought it. It's not true. I fought it. And it wasn't until I accepted the fact that that doesn't matter.
And do you believe that the cancer is a effect of you harboring all that hatred and all that resentment in?
I do. I do, because when I was diagnosed, the doctors had no explanation at all. Of course, they run you through a checklist. Do you smoke? Do you drink? Do you use drugs? Have you been overseas? Have you, been around certain chemicals? I mean, there's a checklist to kind of really kind of narrow down anything that might be the cause or contributor to the diagnosis. And it was like, no, 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 no. But in my mind, I knew that I was holding on to so many of these things in my life, the resentment, the anger, and the bitterness. And not only that, just living through when you have unhealthy people in your life and you're living in that drama and all the cortisol that's flooding your system, it's not good. And our bodies are not designed to carry that. And that's why I say I don't think circumstances really matter, because they only matter to the degree that we take responsibility for our empowerment and design that creates them. I believe that we can design the circumstances in life that we want. And if we're experiencing a life that we don't want, then we have to look within ourselves and ask ourselves, what changes do I need to make, and how do I want to show up? Instead of trying to get everybody and all the circumstances around me to change to fit my paradigm, what do I need to change about me, and how do I want to show up to change and affect my world?
Yeah, that is so true. But I have to ask, like, how did you get over that resentment that you had for your ex-wife? How did you deal with everything that was caused by that resentment?
That's a great question, Jeff. I'd like to be able to say there's one thing and it's kind of in a linear path, and I can point to, kind of a landmark on the road that says this was it, and this is what I did, and from that point forward on my journey, it hasn't been an issue. And that's not the case. It's not true, because it's not a destination, it's a process. And so I can't tell you how many times. I mean, it's a trigger for me when if I felt accused by you and I knew that I wasn't guilty of what you had accused me of, or I thought you were accusing me of, it would trigger that in me and I would get angry, and it takes me back to the there and the then. And so it's practicing the art of presence. It's learning to create space between where you are and the trigger, so that you can create an interruption to be able to do your deep breathing.
All right, hang on. So, in order to create that space in between that situation and where you are, like you were saying, I like to break things down, make them extremely simple for people, because I think people are ultimately lazy. And they're not gonna try to do something that isn't easy. So I like to break it down into steps where they can achieve that simple step, and then eventually move on to the next one and move on to the next one. Can you give us an idea of how exactly you separated yourself from that situation?
Yeah, here was the aha for me. I had taken an assessment. It's called the ACE assessment. It stands for Adverse Childhood Experience, and it's just 10 questions.
ACE assessment.
And they're pretty, graphic questions around, trauma between the birth and 18 years of age. Then it asks you questions about abuse and were your parents alcoholics or whatnot. And, the higher you score from 0 to 10, the higher at risk or propensity you have to, for those diseases or poverty or whatever. There's a whole science behind that and study and research. Well, I had scored a 7. And one day I was reading a book by Viktor Frankl. It was called Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah. Good book.
And in that book, he had this quote. Here was my aha. That in between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space lies our power to choose. And it is in our choice that we find our growth and freedom. And I realized in that moment that I wasn't free and I wasn't growing. And it brought back my 7 score out of 10 on that assessment. And I had this picture in my mind that if I wake up on my best day at a 7, that means my capacity is a 3 from 7 to 10. And if I go to work and I'm triggered all day and I'm stressing out about how I'm going to pay bills, and I come home, that means my capacity is exhausted. I'm hitting the ceiling at a 10. Is this making sense?
Yeah.
So all it would take is me walking in the door and my wife saying to me, I thought I asked you to take out the trash. I had no capacity or space to respond like an adult. I reacted, I lost my mind, and then that would turn into a bigger fight, and it would escalate and escalate and escalate. So I asked myself the question, what can I do to increase that space? I can't go back in time and change those events that created my score of 7. I don't have any power over that. But what can I do inside of me? And so I learned techniques like breathing. What does it mean? I took that for granted, deep breaths. And the biggest thing that I learned is, this was the hardest. You talk about people being lazy. I don't know if I would say lazy. I think it's more about courage. because it takes courage to do what I'm about to tell you that I did. And it took me a long time to get here. And that is to sit in that space, that when I look at all those things that happen to me and all those emotions that come up and those bitterness and the resentments and the sadness and the loss and the anger and all the emotions, a lot of times, especially we as men, we want to stuff that down. We want to pretend that it's not there, and we just go about our business, right? But it took courage for me to actually sit in that space and honor myself, because I finally realized that by me stuffing that stuff down, not only was it killing me, and it later turned into cancer, I believe, I was actually betraying myself, because I was not allowing myself the freedom to feel it, and by feeling it, giving myself the opportunity to grow from there. And so that's the power that I had. I couldn't change anything in my past, but sitting in those emotions, and I was never taught how to identify emotions as a child. And I don't think men do a very good job, generally speaking, because it feels vulnerable. But to sit in those emotions and to identify them, and to just kind of watch them like clouds going across the landscape of the sky, and not judge them, and not judge myself for having them, and not judging myself for at times feeling like I want to kill that woman, but saying, you know what, that's just a feeling, right? I'm not going to act on it. It's not a sin or against the law to feel that. It's valid. And so I allowed myself to feel it. I allowed myself to feel the betrayal, but then I empowered myself to go, did my dad really abandon me? It had nothing to do with me.
No.
And so I began to rewrite that story, and I began to feel something very different. And my life began to change as I started walking through that. So it wasn't a one-time event, Jeff. I still do that every day, because I get triggered and those thoughts come up, and I sit in them, I feel them, I let them go. And then I tell myself the truth. Because
that
truth
has to be difficult, though.
It can be, yeah. It is.
I respect you for taking those steps, because those steps, like I said, a lot of people won't take those steps because they are what I consider lazy. And they just want the instant gratification from a simple step. And I respect your process. But I have to ask, like, you were talking a little bit about a book. Can you tell us a little bit about that book so people can go out and buy it when it comes out?
I would love to. You, as well as I, know a very special person by the name of Brenda Ringwood.
Yes.
Becoming the Best You. I've gone through her Becoming the Best Speaker. I think you were actually one of the judges. I think
I was.
you gigged me on a couple things.
Yeah.
So she gave us an opportunity for a group of us speakers and upcoming coaches to just write a short chapter of our life story, some of what I shared with you in the audience today. And I did that, and it's going to be published in an anthology where you can read a series of stories like mine and different ways and what they have done to overcome, to live the best life that they could, and to make every second count, and to become the best version of themselves. And so that's exciting to me. So I just spoke with her today, and I think they're planning a trip to New York City for the launch, and it's going to be on the marquee at Times Square. So I'm really excited. We don't have dates on yet and when it's going to be released to the stands, but I can keep you posted.
All right, that would be awesome. I really think that is a great opportunity for people, and I definitely look forward to reading it. But so I have to ask now, do you happen to have any contact information you would like to give out to people? If not, it's fine.
You know what? I had a friend. He's actually a close friend of mine now. He's a chaplain for the National Football League. I met him at a networking event, and he gave everybody his cell phone number, and it blew me away. But I never forgot that.
Yeah, I've had all kinds of people on here do that, and it's like, ugh, I don't know that I would do that.
I am an open book, and I just love to help people. And if you call me at 3 in the morning, you're probably not gonna get a response. And if you start blowing my phone up with inappropriate stuff, I mean, with nowadays you can block, and it's all about boundaries. But I want to be accessible to people if they really need the help. So one way you can reach me, my email is brian@thestairwell.org. That's one way.
Wow.
The other way, I have my website. You can go to thestairwell.org. My assessment is on there. You could reach out to me through the contact page. My cell phone number I can put in the chat, or you can put in the chat. I'm happy to give that out. You can text me. I would ask people to text me first because I am in a lot of meetings, but it's 913-333-7670. I'd love to hear from you. Shoot me a text. We can connect. We can jump on a Zoom. Any way I can be of service and add value to your life, I'm more than happy to do that.
Dude, that is amazing right there. But I now you have me curious. So this chaplain for the National Football League, do you still talk to him?
As a matter of fact, he and I are going to go to lunch next week because we have a tour at a virtual reality studio in Independence, Kansas. By the way, I don't think I told everybody I'm coming at you from Kansas City, so that's where I'm at.
Wow. That's pretty cool. So what's this virtual reality place?
I think I said Independence. It's Independence, Missouri. So a friend of mine just launched. It's called Studio 5, and he's got 4 quadrants. I think 16 stations where you can go in and put the headset on, and we're really trying to focus on. I mean, obviously, kids can come in and game, and that's really popular. But with the passion assessments, we're trying to create a virtual component that will integrate into how people can tap into their passions and do team building and things like that. We're going to be doing some passion camps for kids and kind of create like a Shark Tank experience where they can learn about their passions and build prototypes and business plans and do presentations. And so it's really cool. Really, really excited about that.
That's amazing. I have to say that is nothing short of a miracle, because I believe when kids find their passion, they can live much better lives. But I need everybody out there, including you, Brian, to do me a favor this week, next week, and for the rest of your life. I need you to make every second count. Why, you might ask? Because you never know when the seconds are going to run out on your one life. I'll see you guys back here next Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And until then, have a great week. And thank you so much again, Brian.
Thank you,
Have a
Jeff.
great night.
I appreciate it. Thank you.